Welcome to All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
So imagine waking up one morning and your entire town has transformed into a moving, living river of red. The streets are covered. The sidewalks are covered. The forest floor is alive. And the bridges are overtaken by millions and millions of red crabs. How incredible would that be?
Chris, oh my gosh, the Christmas Island red crab is incredible. You picked it this week. I fell in love with this story about the red crab and its abundance and its migration. And I actually learned a ton about Christmas Island, too. It's not cold there, as you would think.
No.
Not at all. We'll talk about why it's named Christmas Island, but just such a cool, diverse hotspot of land crabs. There's there's over 20 species of land crabs, and then more than 160 if you include crabs like in the reefs and the shallow areas. So it's like Crab City, and then the videos of the Christmas Island red crab and its migration are literally jaw-dropping. I probably watched 10 or 15 YouTube videos before I even started reading and learning more about the red crab, because visually it was stunning. So I can't imagine living there. And yeah, it's a spectacle. So we'll talk all about their behavior, this mass migration to the sea for spawning, and some of their cool behaviors. It's a feel-good story this week, because as far as we know, the IUCN doesn't think that the Christmas Island red crab is endangered. There's millions strong, and obviously for the people that live there, it can be a little chaotic during migration. But I love the story of how the people are coming together to help the crabs. So sometimes we talk about wildlife conflict on this podcast, and I would say with the Christmas Island red crabs, that's the opposite. They're making bridges, they're helping them out, they're closing roads. So yeah, it's really fun.
No, I mean, this is definitely one of the world's most epic migrations. That's why we know about them. And the ethos out there is the Christmas Island crab and their mass migration. I mean, tens of millions of them on the move, which is incredible. I mean, it's up there with the wildebeest on the Serengeti, which we covered a few years ago. And I agree with you, Angie. I think their conservation story is very interesting, because there were a lot of challenges, but the island came together and said, okay, we need to do something. And we can learn a lot from that, like what they've done and how they've helped these crabs. So we definitely will get into it. Before we get going, real quick, just thank you everybody for leaving 5-star reviews on iTunes or Spotify. We are on YouTube now, so you can check us out. Please subscribe to our channel. It's still early days for us, and we are putting these episodes out each week, and then some YouTube shorts on some really fun animal facts. So check us out, All Creatures Podcast on YouTube. And thanks for all the support through the years. I mean, reflecting back, we're now entering our 9th year. We've 8 years done, going into our 9th year now doing this podcast, and meeting so many of you, whether it's social media or in person, or just the emails, mean the world to Angie and I. Just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. We love interacting with our listeners. We love your species requests. We have a Facebook group as well, so you can join us on that to kind of discuss hot topics in conservation. So yeah, it's all about the community, and every week it's exciting to learn about these creatures and share them with you.
All right, jump into it. Let's describe this. You describe it, and then we'll go with the size, because I got some Q&A for you. So
so I think the first thing we mentioned in the intro, but this is a land crab. So most of the year they live in their forest, and Chris will talk about the habitat and the region that they live in. But they basically are in the forest, so not in the oceans. They do migrate to the ocean for spawning purposes, and I'll touch on that later in the podcast. But yeah, they are a land crab. And they're cute, chunky land crab. They have round, shouldered shell carapace. It's about 4.5 centimeters, which is about 1.5 inches across in young adults. And then it can get up to 11 to 12 centimeters, or about 4 inches in some of the larger Christmas Island red crabs. Now, keep in mind, red crabs, or crabs in general, do have what is called an exoskeleton. And that's a hard outer shell made of chitin fibers embedded in a protein matrix and mineralized with calcium carbonate to form this hard, protective carapace, and of course, the iconic claws that the crabs have. So I'll talk about their molting later on. They molt a lot when they're growing to become adults, and then usually will molt once a year when they're a full-grown adult. But the body and the legs of the Christmas Island red crab are usually very vivid and glossy red, and that's where they get their name from. Some individuals can be more orange, and a small group are more of a purple shade, but red in general, very, very brilliant red. And keep in mind that crabs do have 10 legs total. They have their 8 walking legs, which we will talk about because these crabs walk and walk and walk sideways, mind you, too, for miles when it's time to migrate each year. So they have their 8 walking legs plus the 2 front claws that are typically equal in size. Male claws can be a little bit thicker, and female claws may be a little smaller. But yeah, they're just a sturdy, good-looking crab, and they almost remind you of a little like armored tank when they move sideways and they march and march and march across the forest floor, which we'll put videos on our links on our show notes and YouTube channel to check out because it's so fun to watch. And then when you are looking at these videos or photos, it's interesting too because I described them as basically just the shell is rich and glossy red. But on the top of the surface of their shell, it does often look a little bit darker. They almost have like a maroon brownish wash over the bright color. There's this like dark tone sometimes in the center of their carapace that fades. And to me, it almost, sometimes I look, I'm like, oh, is that like an hourglass on there? Or it does have like irregular darker blotches that break up the red and giving the top of the shell almost like a speckled or weathered look, and it's not perfectly uniform in red color. So yeah, that caught me as kind of a cool marking that I didn't know how to describe it. So yeah,
no, they are. They are just they're like your prototypical red crab, but you're right. That top, that purplish hue. Looking at some photos of it, and then those unique markings. And you did cover the size, so it's about medium-sized crab. Leg span can be, so if you're looking at the total leg span, up to 12 inches or 30 centimeters. But when I went down was okay. So this has been fun, Angie. How big or how little do you think the world's smallest crab is? How tiny would you place that?
Tiny, maybe like the tip of my finger.
Wow, that's good. Yeah,
Okay,
smarty pants.
great.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the world's smallest is the pea crab. So
Aw,
it's
that's
a quarter of
cute.
an inch. Yeah, 6 millimeters. It is literally the size of a pea, or like you said, like your pinky finger.
Well, we'll talk about the migration of course, the adult crabs coming to breed and then spawn near the ocean. But the spawn comes and turns into little baby crabs, and the baby crabs have to march back into the forest. And so they looked really small, like that size.
Yeah.
So that's why I was coming up with it.
Okay.
But I'm even more impressed with the biggest crab.
Okay, we're gonna get there. You'll get that.
Because I took a couple detours when I was prepping for this because I'm like, oh my God, we got to cover the coconut crab. So.
Yes, that was the one. You gave that away. But no, the pea crab, really quick, because I was like really tiny, and it actually lives in shellfish. So oysters, mussels, or sea cucumbers, lives inside them.
So sea cucumbers have crabs? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. That's an adult joke.
Fair enough.
They do. It's parasitism.
Every day is a school day, right? So that's awesome.
Sea cucumbers, they do actually in their internal sides. I'll leave it there. You can Google it yourself.
Well, what do they eat?
Crab,
they must eat. Do they? I'm so interested now.
It's not. It is a detrimental. It's a parasitism.
Okay.
So it is not a a good relationship so much for the sea cucumber, especially where it hides out, or these shellfish of oysters and stuff. So I thought that was fascinating. So there's one on our
Super
list.
interesting.
I agree. Coconut crab has been on our list for a long time. Because it's December, we did the Christmas Island red crab. So coconut crab's probably going to be coming around July time frame, because we're definitely going to do it soon. But is that the largest crab in the world?
I thought it was. Is it not?
It's not the largest. No,
Is
Japanese
it the largest land
spider
crab?
I
Yeah.
think it is. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But the largest crab in the ocean or in the world is the Japanese spider crab. Guess how long the leg span is on this crab?
2 feet.
Not even close.
Oh,
12 to 13 feet leg
well,
span.
that's something out of sci-fi movies there, Chris.
It does. Yeah. It's up to 4 meters. And you look at it and I'm like, okay, somebody must have, when they make these movies with the giant, I think it was a Tom Cruise movie that came out like 20 years ago or 15 years ago with the aliens and they're like big crabs marching down the street. That's what these look like literally.
Cool.
The body and these super, super long legs. The Japanese spider crab only found in Japan, but their carapace is only 16 inches, but the legs are just super long, super, super long. So I thought that was fun.
It. I love it.
Yeah, the world of crabs. Now, where did Christmas Island red crabs live?
Well, yeah, Chris, that was one of the first questions I asked because I, obviously being from North America, I'm not as familiar with different islands and things like this out in the Indian Ocean. So, yeah, I didn't know that Christmas Island was an Australian territory. And I learned that it was south of Sumatra and Java and northwest of Australia. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun just playing with maps and seeing where it was at and then looking around. But it's not a very big island either, which for having that many species of land crab, right? So they're probably fighting for different niches and territory on the island. It's only 135 square kilometers or 52 square miles. So that's not that much room.
Yeah,
and it's very isolated.
Yes, it's way out there.
Yeah, it's way out there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then, of course, Christmas Island got its name because it was discovered on Christmas Day, 1643, by Captain William Miners, if I'm saying the name correctly. So, but it does not look anything like cold or Christmas, or it's actually it's where people from the north, from Michigan, where I'm from, this is where you want to go on Christmas.
This is where we in the Southern Hemisphere enjoy our Christmases.
Nice.
It's hot.
Exactly.
And we go to the beach and we barbecue. And my brain still can't comprehend it after being in New Zealand for over 8 years. I still think of Christmas. I immediately go to snow, Santa, North Pole, even though I grew up in California and it was never that cold at Christmas. But no, down here it is beach, flip-flops. We're in our swim trunks. We're at the beach, at the oceans or swimming pools. That's our Christmas. So, yeah, it's perfect weather for us here. But yeah, Christmas Island, that's it. That is only where they are. Generally in the forests, the inland forests, the scrub forests, lower slopes, but, logs and stuff. Definitely on my bucket list to visit one day and get out there and watch
it wasn't
this migration.
until we started doing this research. But I'm like, how fun would that to be witness that migration in person? It'd be awesome. So, and then, but looking at where Christmas Island is geographically located and how it's isolated and how it's not that big of an island, I just couldn't help but ask the question, why are there so many crabs on Christmas Island? And they have all these species because the island offers this rare combination of different habitat types, isolation, and this evolutionary history that favors land crabs. So, it's just really incredible. It has the island itself is tropical, right, in the Indian Ocean, but it has steep coastal terraces. It has rainforest, caves, wetlands, mangroves, and it just has all these different ecological niches for crabs to exploit whether it's on land or in the water. The other thing too that probably helps the crab populations out is that there is a lack of predators in general. We'll circle back around to that because they do have some invasive species now that are potentially of concern. But yeah, it's just in general, it was isolated for so long that it's just a crab's dream. And as you mentioned, the climate is pretty nice year round.
Yeah.
So that definitely allows for these crab communities to just thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, near the equator, like when I went to Papua New Guinea, that was late winter for us in New Zealand, and it was beautiful and warm and tropical. So, yeah, definitely a unique place on Earth. And it's so interesting, this red island crab, sorry, start that again. It's so interesting. The Christmas Island red crab is absolutely critical to the Christmas Island ecosystem. They and I'm gonna jump into the cockroach because this is where this idea kind of generated, because we did talk about Christmas Island a few months back. We talked about cockroaches. But the Christmas Island red crab is the ecosystem engineer in Christmas Island. They are absolutely critical to that biome. And if they go away, that island will completely change. Because like Angie said, millions of years of evolution to develop this relationship with the forest and their roles. And you can't just replace that over 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. You're talking thousands or tens of thousands of years. So this was one of the one species I came across in this podcast that it was that critical. They are that critical to the island environment.
And the way that the Christmas Island red crab is such a good ecosystem engineer is that it shreds this leaf litter when it's eating. We'll talk more about nutrition, but it eats seeds. And when it's doing this, it's turning soil and it's nutrient cycling, and it's helping out the entire forest floor and plant community. So it's just incredibly important, like Chris mentioned, and we'll talk a little bit about it too, but they are in the food webs. Their eggs and larvae feed fish in the ocean. We'll talk a lot about that. And adults will sometimes scavenge for food and help clean up the area. And they can be a meal for some of the larger robber or coconut crabs as well. So just really important. And I think when we talk about why care about a species, they're definitely indicators of the health of the ecosystem in the area. And they have seen, and we'll talk about this, but they have seen a decline of Christmas Island red crabs because of invasive species like the yellow crazy ants. So with these invasive species of the island, if we monitor the red crab, who's endemic and unique to Christmas Island, then it can help ward off some of these invasive species that then are harming many species of animals, plants, and insects that are native to that region. So, yeah. I think that from the ecosystem point of view, you nailed it. They're just really incredibly important. And then the mass migration of the Christmas Island red crab it's globally iconic. It's incredible. It draws scientists, filmmakers, tourists. It's just such a natural spectacle. It's like a wonder that it's important for ecotourism in the region, and it can fund local conservation. So yeah, that's why I care.
No, definitely, it's on my list. It's on my list. Like now that I've seen
exactly
albatross,
like it wasn't for me. I didn't even know where Christmas Island was because unfortunately, not unfortunately, but because just being from North America, the region where I'm at, it's not talked a lot about. And now I'm like, let's go. So
yeah, it's like you want to go and visit and see this.
Yeah,
it's up there on my list with getting to the Serengeti. How about that? Not quite. I mean, the Serengeti is definitely up there because that's been my dream since I was a baby, watching these nature shows growing up. But I do want to talk about some of the invasive species because they've been really detrimental, big time. And first, I do want to circle back to the cockroach, the Christmas Island cockroach. Say that 10 times fast. Christmas Island cockroach.
You're doing great.
Because in that episode, we talked about cockroaches, and I just thought they were just pests and and now I come to realize 99 point something percent of cockroaches are critical to nutrient recycling. In my house now, my in-laws are visiting from the UK, and with Pip, and I even tell my sons who crush the cockroaches, I'm like, don't, I will put them outside. They find one of these big Otago cockroaches that we have in our house. I'm like, they don't want to be inside. They want to be outside. They just wander inside.
And that's an important note, if you haven't
Yeah.
listened to our cockroach episode, is most species of cockroach in the world live outside, want to live outside, prefer to live outside. There's only a select few species that live in houses, and those, of course, are unwanted pests.
Yeah, the German and American cockroaches. You can stomp those all you want. So the Christmas Island cockroach is critical also with the Christmas Island red crab. They work hand in hand. So the red crabs are doing the heavy lifting, and the cockroaches come in and do the fine tuning of the ecosystem. So they will come in after the crabs are done. Any leftover plant material they'll digest, any crab droppings they'll recycle. They'll help decompose some of that organic matter. They help keep the crab's burrows clean and shapely, and they're just really, really important. So they're helping the ecosystem by speeding up this nutrient recycling. And so they all have their critical role. Now, with that being said, what is going on in Christmas Island is very similar to what's going on around islands throughout the world. Hawaii, we talked about that last week with one of Angie's favorite places. But the Caribbean, obviously the South Pacific where I live, and all of our islands, Fiji and Guam and Samoa, and going up into Asia. Now we're going into the Indian Ocean, and we know like Christmas Island and some of these others where modern threats like invasive species are coming, like Ecuador. I definitely, Galapagos is way up there. Like that's where you and John are supposed to go soon, one of these days, I hope. John, if you're listening, take your other half down to Ecuador, go to Galapagos, and see all that incredible wildlife. So invasive species has been a really detrimental to the Christmas Island red crab and also the cockroaches. And that's what Angie said. The yellow crazy ant was accidentally introduced to Christmas Island. That's like when you go to Australia or New Zealand, our biosecurity is so strict because introduction of diseases or pests can be really devastating to us and our ecosystems, our native wildlife, our agriculture, our way of life. So when you do travel here, that's why the border control, for those that have traveled here or live here, we have good listeners in New Zealand, Australia, know very, very strict biosecurity, and that's purposeful, because we need to protect.
Florida could have taken a couple lessons on that.
No, Florida's lost. You're lost. Florida's an experiment of let's throw everything in there and see what happens. Burmese python are doing just fine in the Florida Everglades.
So great.
So Christmas Island, they went for a massive eradication program. And we talked a little bit about this, interestingly enough, last week with the albatross, with getting rid of rats and other pests, feral cats on the islands, subantarctic islands and islands around New Zealand and Australia. Well, Christmas Island went through a massive eradication program to get rid of these yellow crazy ants because they did knock the population back in half. Like they went from 40 million, they estimated, down to 20 and dropping. And Christmas Island crabs disappeared from many, many parts of Christmas Island. So the red island crab, sub 20 million, 15 million, maybe as low as 10 million. Early 2000s, Christmas Island goes, oh my goodness, what's going on? These crazy ants. So they did this massive aerial ant baiting to eliminate the crazy ant, and it seems to be working. Don't believe they think they're completely eradicated, but they've definitely knocked back the population to where the crabs now are above 20 million.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The whole conservation story of Christmas Island goes back even further, because there actually used to be two species of rats that were native there, that probably helped control some of the Christmas Island red crab populations. But they're extinct now, so there's no native rat species which anymore. And researchers think that they died out and became extinct on Christmas Island because of probably introduced rat species that had a lot of diseases that the endemic island ones couldn't ward off. And they're not entirely sure, but with rats being gone on the island, that probably helped the booming crab population because they had even less predators. So then they introduced a tiny parasitic wasp to help cut back on the crazy yellow ant's food source, which helped knock that population of the crazy ants down a little bit. And we are, as Chris mentioned, seeing the red crab numbers increase. So it's just a really interesting. This is why we collect data and why we're learning more about invasive species or about population control, about the intricate biodiversity and balance of the food web, especially on these islands where there's not a lot of places for these creatures to go and they're sharing a lot of resources. So I'm just happy that there are so many people that are polling and fighting for the Christmas Island red crab and trying to get their numbers back up to a more historical, or at least historical in recent times, into the tens of millions. So
Yeah, no,
and the people are helping, right? Yeah, as we mentioned.
Anytime that you have a story like this where a population's in serious decline and the population of Christmas Island come together to protect a critical animal to their world is always warms my heart. And again, that shows the importance of getting locals involved.
Yeah, and we'll show some of the videos on our show notes, but or you can just Google it yourself. The locals, I mean, they do so much. They close roads. They have an infrastructure. It's a 5-meter high crab bridge on Murray Road, which is a big intersection there by the ocean. So yeah, the people that live on Christmas Island have really become more and more tolerant and respectful of the crabs during their annual migration, and are super cautious when driving. And like I said, they'll block off roads even. And yeah, it's a feel good story to see how humans can live with wildlife and help them thrive.
Yeah. Now, before we move on to evolution, I do want to say, did that baiting impact the cockroach? Because we talked about that in that episode, that when the cockroaches were disappearing, leaf litter was piling up, and it made it harder for the Christmas Island crabs to migrate because the yellow crazy ants were also attacking the cockroaches. So the scientists that did this, they were not as concerned. It did knock back cockroach populations, but they reproduced so quickly that they were able to rebound. So while crazy ants were much, much less, super colonies gone, the cockroaches that it was in decline has come back. So that's not a concern. And like Angie said, Christmas Island has done many, many things to help. Their communities are always involved in this migration, and the whole island comes together to where now, you're upwards of maybe close to 30 million crabs migrating now. The red crabs have returned to areas where there were dead zones. Their spawning is going great, and it just looks good for them. So that's all great news. All right, jumping into evolution, just to start this off, crabs are animals, just like insects are animals. So the kingdom is Animalia. Their phylum is Arthropoda. So their class is Malacostraca. And this one's interesting. This one, you're talking 40,000 species, huge class. But this is the crabs, lobsters, shrimp, krill, uh, other mantis shrimp falls in here, our favorite, crayfish. We've got to revisit them. I mean, I'm glad we're doing a crab today, but I guess coconut crab would be the next big one. But I'd like to do like lobster too. Just would be a fun one. They 40,000 species, so huge class of animals. The order is Decapoda, so this is again 15,000 species, a very large order of crustaceans. Breaking this down, now we're in the family Jacarcinidae, and these are land crabs that I love their evolution story. They're very unique for a crab to be surviving on land. Roughly 28 species, right? Is that what we started off with?
Well, definitely 20 on Christmas Island, so that's already a lot. But yeah, I'm sure there's 8 others somewhere else.
Yeah, they call it the Galapagos Island of land crabs. I'm going to
Right?
Christmas Island.
Well, that's why I went down that rabbit hole. I'm like, how do 20 land crabs live on this island that's like 53 square miles? Like, that's insane. 20 species, different species.
Yeah, there's so many in there.
Like, why? And so, yeah, it's once again, we haven't been to Christmas Island, but when you look at all the different types of habitats that they have, from mangroves to forests to caves to, so yeah, it's really, really
That's
exciting.
Nuts.
Fun.
It's yeah. Again, one of the reasons I love this podcast, we learn so much.
Yeah, exactly. It blew me out the water because that's what I was when I went to the maps. I was expecting this huge island. I'm like, how have I never heard of this before? Yeah. And then when I was like 53 square miles, that makes sense that I haven't heard of it. But 20 land crabs? It's like the island of the crabs. They're like you said, the Galapagos, of the Indian Ocean. Really cool.
Yeah, they got to get there. All right, genre is Jacarcinidae, and you have 3 different species, and then the Christmas Island red crab. You do have the Andaman Islands purple crab, and then there's another one that's Jacarcodia hume, which is in the eastern Indian Ocean, including Christmas Island. So they're on there too. They're probably one of the 20 on there. But yeah, I mean, crab evolution, arthropods, I mean, this is going back at least 250 million years, where you had early animals. I mean, some estimates could be 400 million years ago. These animals getting these hardened outer shells, these early crustaceans develop these claws and legs and scuttle side to side, like Angie was talking about in the beginning. It's been an evolutionary trait that has served these animals well through 5 mass extinctions. They've survived all of those. They're one of the few types of animal that have. And so they've been around a long time. Dinosaurs, pre-dinosaurs, crabs, crab-like animals have been around. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you came up with like when the red crab was an offshoot, or basically when these land crabs were an offshoot, but it's super incredible to me, this evolutionary 2-strategy life cycle. And we'll talk more about it, but the adults are fully terrestrial on land in the forest, hanging out. And then the embryos are born in the ocean and they have to survive in a marine environment. So it's just this really incredible physiology to be able to transition so flawlessly between sea and land. And there has to be several adaptations physiologically for them to do that. So they have to have air-breathing gills on the land, but they have to stay moist. And I'll talk all about that. I nerded out about how they keep their gills moist. But they have to have these strong walking legs because they're not swimming in their adult life. And then a lot of physiological behaviors that minimize the water loss. And we'll talk about that, how these land crabs burrow and they time a lot of their activity with the rain. So the evolution of these physiological and behavioral adaptations to come out of the ocean and then say, you know what, let's live on Christmas Island is, to me, is really, really incredible, and was one of my favorite facts. It was one of my favorite facts this week.
Yeah. It is fascinating to think about crabs living on land and surviving, because we typically think of them in the ocean. But I go from the fifth mass extinction. I know land crabs lived through that, if there were some then. They did not survive, or they did not evolve yet. But the crabs in the ocean were able to survive that. I mean, they're very opportunistic. They can hide in caves and stuff.
And some grew really, really long, spider
14
legs.
feet. Yes. But the rise of land crabs date back about 50 million years. Once the Earth settled, that's 5 to 10 million years.
A long, long time ago.
Yeah, land masses are rising. You're getting these islands, and some crabs started to venture out of the sea and then develop these things Angie talked about, modifying their gills to function like lungs, how to conserve water, and their legs get stronger to move on land, and then go from a marine debris to forest vegetation diet. That happened over millions of years. Now, Christmas Island, roughly 10 million years ago, is when these crabs started to come out of the ocean and settle on there. It could be as early as 4 million years ago. But like Angie said earlier, there was really no large predators. There was tons of leaf litter to eat. There's humid, so, staying moist and all those things, and little competition. So they found their little paradise for land crabs, obviously.
They sure did. Yeah.
And this is what I found, again, another fact, fascinating. Angie, when we look at islands, is it usually giganticism or dwarfism do we see?
We usually see dwarfism because there's a big competition for resources. So it's like, stay smaller so I can eat less.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, like, Prehistoric Planet, we just interviewed the producer there, and we talked about the dwarf elephants that's shown. It's so cute, these little tiny elephants. And you do see dwarfism in elephants today in Indonesia. These crabs, it actually turns into giganticism. And I was like, how? Why? How did? Because we think dwarfism because there's less resources. So like Angie said, things are smaller. But on these islands, it actually favored giganticism in smaller invertebrates.
So cool.
So we see island dwarfism in other large vertebrates like elephants, hippos, deer, other types of animals. They shrink because there's less to eat, so they conserve. Where crabs are different, flipped on its head, because it actually being bigger helps them scavenge more, eat more. They exploit that leaf litter more. And there's not this big predator dynamic where they have to be smaller to survive. So it actually favored giganticism, which I found brilliant. That was incredible. There's no natural predators, means they were able to survive in this crab paradise and just get bigger and eat all they want.
Well, I didn't do a ton of research on the coconut crab or the robber crab, but I do know that they will eat some of the red crabs during migration. So maybe they became the predators themselves, right?
Yeah. Probably, something else. And there just wasn't large predation. And then actually being larger, they could retain water better, move around the island better. And their ecological roles just rewarded size. So you were... the smaller crabs couldn't survive as well, or couldn't migrate as far and regenerate their genetics. So, fascinating creatures. Another mind-blowing statistic, factoid, Angie, is lifespan.
Yes.
Like I would have thought, honestly, if you would ask me how long could a crab live, I would have said max 3 years, 4 years.
Sure.
I thought
Meat. Well, and then I was thinking, well, okay, when they go spawn, then they die after that. Nope. They go back to the forest and live like another 10 years.
And I guess that
Crazy.
makes sense. I mean, giant lobsters, they say, are ancient grandmas and grandpas, I guess.
Good point. Yeah, we do
Yeah,
need
I
to
never
cover the
thought of
lobster.
that.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 to 30 years, Christmas Island crabs. 20 to 30 years for a crab.
I love it.
That's
I
how
love
long
it.
they live.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. That's
And we'll talk
nuts.
about it too, their life cycle, but it's a long time before, and I guess in a crab's lifespan, to me, it was a long time before they will actually reproduce as well.
Yeah. Yep. Up to 5 years, right?
So stay
Like, yeah, we'll talk
tuned
about
because
that.
I don't have my slide in
Stay
front of me.
tuned. Okay, stay tuned.
I think it's 3 to 5 years, but
Yeah. It's around there.
But,
Okay,
but it
okay.
seems much longer than other invertebrates we've covered.
So, who's faster, the rabbit or the red crab?
The rabbit.
Yeah, by far. Average walking speed 100 to 300 meters per hour, or 0.06 to 0.2 miles per hour. That's how
And
fast
sometimes
they
they're
walk.
going up and over logs and rocks and steep cliffs and highways and byways. And they say if you leave your door open during migration season, you'll just get crabs all over your house. So there's a lot of obstacles, I think, that hinder them. I bet they're a little faster if there was a straightaway.
Well, burst speed up to 3 miles per hour. So
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Not quite faster than a human.
My husband
jogging,
would think.
but...
My husband would agree. That's how fast that's his pace when he walks the dogs at nighttime. Because they stop and sniff everything with him.
Yes.
Because he's a nice guy and he lets them do that. But yeah, so yeah, crab-like speed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's its definition of crab-like speed.
Okay. Let's talk about how they survive on land. And you mentioned moisture, so let's get on that.
I have several slides on hydration and moisture. So
it's critical. It's critical for them. They need it. And earlier I talked about they live in a very humid environment, so that helps. But what are some of the other things going on? Because if you put this crab in water, they would die. Mm-hmm. If you submerged Christmas Island red crab in water, adult, they would drown.
Yeah.
Where the young ones don't, which is interesting in the life cycle. But they need to stay moist. So how do they do it?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the Christmas Island red crab uses gills to breathe, but it needs to stay very moist and conserve hydration. So yes, Christmas Island red crabs do uptake water, but they don't rely on frequent drinking like most mammals do. Most of their water balance is maintained by staying in moist habitats in their burrows, and then physiological regulation, which we'll talk about because that's super fun. And occasionally they will have contact with surface water. But these forests that red crabs live in is very humid, tropical forest. And so there are seasons, even in perfect island weather like Christmas Island. They have a dry season and more of a wet season. So during the dry season, the Christmas Island red crab will basically seal itself deep in burrows that then help trap the moisture. And this will greatly reduce evaporation loss, and it keeps their gill chambers, which, as Chris mentioned, act kind of like their lung, nice and damped. And the other thing, too, is similar to other land crabs, the Christmas Island red crab will use their gills and the tissues around their gills to basically manage salt and water. So, super fun fact. Urine from the crab can be passed over the gills, so the ions in the water are reabsorbed, which help conserve water without needing to drink often. So I was like, what? I'm a scientist. I need to know more about, you know me, I love poop is my favorite, but I will also accept pee as something interesting. So what I learned this week, Chris, is that the Christmas Island red crab does something called urine recycling. The antennal glands, and that's basically like the crab kidneys, will produce primary urine, so that's probably similar to how we do it, that simply contains excess salts and nitrogenous wastes, but also a lot of water, right? And so simply instead of excreting it, much of this fluid is routed across the gill surface. And therefore, through several active ion pumps and transporters and stuff that is a little bit too deep to get into. They basically adjust their internal osmolarity with their body fluids, and it helps keep them hydrated. And keep in mind, besides this active transport with ions, there are some hormones involved as well that help basically regulate the reabsorption of water from the urine. So really, really fascinating stuff. Who knew?
I can't think of another animal that has recycled urine. I know we get highly concentrated urine in many, many desert species because the kidneys are so efficient. But I don't know of another species that we've covered to date, like getting on like 350, that was a strategy.
Yeah, that's why this podcast is so fun, Chris. I was like, ooh, urine recycling. Tell me more about that. And especially for their gills, right? So it's just, but this evolutionary strategy, this physiological strategy, is really, really important to help the crabs avoid from drying out. Because as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, that is death. And so they cannot desiccate. That's a fancy term for dry out. And so they also have behavioral adaptations along with the physiological ones to help them stay as moist as possible. So another fun thing I learned this week is we've covered several species that hibernate on this podcast. But in the summer season, or I don't know, summer, but in the dry season on Christmas Island where there's not a lot of rain, the Christmas Island red crab will estivate, and that's a fancy science term for a hibernation summertime sleep. And so they'll hang out deep in their burrows for about 2 to 3 months. Remember, they're closing it off, having it be like a humid chamber. And this estivation or summertime hibernation, if you will, drastically cuts the activity from their bodies, and therefore it slows down their respiratory and evaporated water loss. So I'm probably saying this so wrong, but estivate is basically a dormancy in summer sleep. And I'm sure they're not the only species that do it. We just need to cover more of them, right? And it helps them keep what little water they have and conserve it.
That estivate's interesting, but I'm still on this urine thing because I'm thinking you're talking about it. Well, because one of the things is like we're talking about exploring the universe, and not in my lifetime, but if we do go to Mars or humans do explore outside our solar system, we're going to need to recycle urine. And we're going to need to, that's one of the strategies is, reclaiming the water from there. And so that's one of the things they're looking at. But then you talked about estivate, and if I said that right, and I'm thinking of all these sci-fi films where they go, like Interstellar. I love that movie, where they go in water and, they have the breathing tubes and they go and they estivate or hibernate for deep space travel. So when you think about, so many reasons to care about animals and the species, but just thinking of what we learn from the natural world that we could utilize to make humanity better. The Christmas Island red crab is teaching me so many things today. It's
incredible. Really is. Yeah. And I did several years ago, I interviewed Chris Fisher, and he was the founder of O-Search, which studies and tracks great white sharks and other sea life. Phenomenal group. We should actually get in touch with him again. He invited me on a boat, and I haven't taken him up on that.
I know.
So I need to do
Big
that.
crush there.
Total conservation crush. And John he gets it. He's the one that told me, you need to interview this guy. But he said very well, he's like, I don't understand why all these million and billionaires are flying to the moon or trying to do whatever on Mars. He's like, we have this incredible planet here with so many things that we still need to learn about, and resources and just beauty, and let's save planet Earth before we colonate
Yes.
Mars. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
bravo. And then my conservation crush grew even more.
Well, I mean, it's even saying here on Earth, like I know desalination is a thing, but if we can learn from, say, the Christmas Island red crab, a
Exactly.
more efficient system, like you talk about these ion pumps and things going on, if we could study that more in depth and understand how they do it, then maybe we can build something that's much cheaper, greener, and utilize that. So there's so many reasons to care about these animals, not just because they're awesome and it's just, it just warms your heart and soul. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how they navigate their environment. That's kind of a rabbit hole I went down. Vision,
Okay.
compound eyes. Not as good as mantis shrimp. I don't think anything's going to come close to mantis shrimp. It's like my favorite.
They see like more colors than we see. It's a Technicolor dream over there for mantis shrimp.
But they do have compound eyes, similar light intensity, motion, shadows, those things they can see. It's pretty wide angle sight. They do have a pretty good sense of smell, so chemoreception. But they use that. They don't have a nose. They're little antennae, so that's why crabs have antennae. Is they have chemical receptors at the tip of that. So like our smell or nasal receptors, that's on their antenna, and so they can identify food, mate, or other things, decay, litter, things that they're going to do that. So they do use that. Then, kind of like elephants, because this is what I loved about elephants and how elephants and horses and other large, say, hoofstock can feel with their legs and hooves. So the Christmas Island red crab legs are highly sensitive to movement, ground vibrations. So any texture changes, that feeds to their brain. Like Angie said, they have to climb over quite a few obstacles.
Yeah, they're really good at climbing.
So, yeah. So they can feel that. And then even other crabs are maybe being predator, like a coconut crab or this robber crab, they can feel that and maybe scamper away. So that's another way they do it. Their carapace is pretty good at detecting temperature, and their legs, where, like Angie said, they're trying to avoid heat and water loss. So that's why they're most active in and this is getting into behavior, but dusk and dawn, high heat parts of the day, they will find shade or stay in those burrows. But then we'll talk about the importance of rain. And they're finding out that these crabs have really good memory and really strong environmental cues that kick them into gear.
Yes.
Which I'm trying to get to. I want to rush through this because I really want to get to migration. So before we get there,
let's go.
Well, okay. So we said they eat leaf litter. That's the main thing. Then the seedlings you talked about, the young plants, fungi they might eat, fruits, flowers. They don't have teeth. They use their mandibles to break it down. And they have a 2-part stomach. It's called a gastric mill. So it blends it in mortar. So it crushes it up. And then, which we're finding out in research today, their gut microbes are critical to help break that down. So we know that in our herbivores, we're finding out gut microbes are critical to our overall health and how we digest stuff. So the gut microbes, digestive enzymes in this 2-part stomach, break down the leaf litter. They get the nutrients. They absorb out of it, and then they poop out the rest. And then the little cockroaches go, oh, there's some good stuff in here. And they'll eat it and recycle it.
Yeah.
And they'll refine it.
Or what they don't eat, it fertilizes the soil. And
there you go. It's just this
whole cycle of life. And I found it to be interesting too, that they will be scavengers and even eat dead animals or snails. Another fun species that accidentally got introduced to Christmas Island was the giant African land snail. And they will actually eat those. So
I am not, I know we invertebrates, I'm not comfortable attacking a snail yet on the podcast, but maybe.
Really?
That one, I really thought that would be cool. Those giant snails from Africa. They're like massive. Yeah. I thought,
exactly.
oh, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see. I don't know if we're going to, we're starting to do some insects.
I said we've done a few insects. We did the monarch. We did the cockroach. So
We
we've
did the
talked about
praying
we want to do an
mantis.
ant sometime. I'd love a
Ants
bee.
first up.
I'll
There's
need
so
I'll
many
need the
cool ants.
weeks of research to do that, and then to whittle it down into a hour plus podcast. But yeah,
All right,
got
I'm throwing the gauntlet down to our listeners at this point. Anybody tell me or email us allcreaturespod@gmail.com or comment on Spotify or on social media. Tell us which ant species we should cover and why. Because I was like army ants, but then Angie's like exploding ants. But then we have crazy ants, and then we so many, the bullet ant.
yeah. Oh
So
yeah, right. So
if there's a species of ant, just let us know and tell us why, and we're going to add that to our list. Okay, let's get to this migration, because this is what, honestly, the reason we are covering them. The environmental cue. So this is what's going to be tricky to see this migration, Angie. I think you're going to have to be here in New Zealand around the time of year. This is how I'm going to sell it to you. And then when this environmental cue hits, you and I get on a plane and we go to Christmas Island to watch this happen.
I love that. Well, I think we'll have to plan a big time span. We'll talk about that because it's in general, the Christmas Island red crab migration happens sometime between October and December. So there is not an exact date, but as you mentioned, it is usually it is cued by the rainy season. So that comes. But what I found fascinating is it's not just like the rain hits and they all start walking to the ocean. Okay. What research has shown is the Christmas Island red crabs also follow the lunar cycle too. And this will help them know, or the females, I should say, know the best time to enter the ocean to spawn. So the data suggests, or what the data shows, is that it might start raining. And then I guess the Christmas Island red crab looks up at the moon, and then it might wait up to a month after the first rains or during a certain type of moon phase that I don't even know as a human. If that doesn't match up, then they'll wait. So I literally have in my notes, how do they understand the lunar cycle? Ugh. Like I don't even know it. Like I mean, and I don't try to study it or anything, but it's just their bodies know this. And so I was like, what in the world? Because rainy season, I guess I can understand that they're getting more moisture into their bodies. They can smell it. That makes more sense to me as a physiologist. I can extrapolate on how their bodies and minds can understand that the rainy season is a cue. But when you throw in this moon phase, lunar cycle stuff, forget about it. So what I've read was that the Christmas Island red crabs will use a mix of environmental timing cues and internal hormones to basically synchronize this migration and spawning. But the exact sensory pathway for quote unquote reading the moon is not known. So there you go. All you budding young minds out there, move to Christmas Island and figure this out.
So we basically need to move there for a month or two and just camp out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I would learn more about the moon as well, and tide. It's all connected to the moon and the tide. And I mean, they do it, like you said, they have a good sense of smell. So maybe it's something to do with that. But all I know is sometime from when the rainy season starts in October to December, plus when the moon phases matches up, plus the time it takes for them to walk to the ocean. So they're somehow able to do like crab math about, as Chris mentioned, anywhere from 20 to 40 million, historically up to 70 million male and female Christmas Island red crabs will migrate from the forest floor, from the inner forest of the island to the ocean once a year to breed. On average, the typical red crab will cover about 5 miles from the forest to the sea on these 4-inch legs, walking sideways, up and over and on different terrain and topography. The march or the migration takes about 1 to 2 weeks. So once again, they have to time that because they want to get to the beach at a certain moon phase that helps with, I believe it's low tide, but maybe it's high tide. Anyways, don't quote me on that. And yeah, during the migration, they have a lot of difficulties to overcome. They have people, traffic, homes, highways, all of this. But they also have predators. As I mentioned, the coconut or the robber crab will sometimes eat them. And yeah, I was just blown. I mean, I watched all the videos of them marching, and then I had the thought to myself, how the heck do they know where the ocean is?
Yeah. Yeah. Can they smell it? Is it
Right.
chemoreception? Yeah.
Yeah. So of course, I went down
And
that rabbit
memory. I
hole
mean,
because
and memory.
we always, each week
Yeah.
we'll always try to talk about a species superpower. And I mean, the Christmas Island red crab has a lot of them. So it knows timing, it knows the moon phase, it also knows directions like a GPS of how to get to the ocean. But what the research suggests is that there's not necessarily a single ocean detector like eyes or ears or smelling. Because we talked a lot about the albatross last week and how they could smell things from, I think the data I read, up to 12 miles away. And that's how they were able to find you when you were on the boat a few weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Uh, so far, that type of sense or organelle has not been demonstrated. Uh, Researchers just know that the vision is important, like basically sensing light. So obviously, if you're in a forest burrow or forest floor, the ocean's going to be lighter because there won't be as many trees there. They think that the crabs understand something about topography because obviously that changes as they get towards the ocean. Researchers also think that the Christmas Island red crabs might be using chemical or humidity gradients in their navigation patterns, because for anybody that lives near an ocean, when you get closer to the ocean, it gets more humid and there's a little bit more salt in the air, that kind of thing. The Christmas Island red crab knows when to go. They know where to go. Generally downhill. Is basically, I guess the topography there is downhill towards the ocean. And then they're looking for light in their vision. And then maybe they're getting moisture or salt cues from their antenna, or like you said, their legs are pretty sensitive as well. Maybe they're feeling or understanding more salt in the air, more humidity in the air. But we don't know, Chris. We don't know.
Yeah.
But all we know
Okay.
is they know how to get there, and they go back, and then they go to the ocean and they go back to the forest, like no problem.
And okay, so what is the purpose of this migration?
Yeah. So the
leading into the spawning and all these environmental cues that they pick up on, these land crabs, that a little 4-inch carapace, right? So yeah, 12 inches if you spread it out, but little 4-inch legs going 5 miles. That's insane compared to their size.
Yeah, it takes 1 to 2 weeks. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, if you dropped me in the middle of Christmas Island and then told me to find the ocean, like, it'd be the most embarrassing game of Survivor. Like, I wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Well, and imagine it. Everything's what, 100-fold bigger. The trees look like
the
little
scale
cities
of it.
to you.
Yeah, right.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You scale up, and then you have to find yourself 5 miles, could be 50 miles to us,
easily.
to the ocean, and finding your way, navigating your way there.
It's incredible.
What are you doing?
Chris.
Yeah,
it's
it is.
Incredible.
That's what it is. Nature is
and that's how
insane.
powerful hormones are, right? So all this mass migration is basically telling them it is time to find a partner and breed, and then for the females spawn, layer eggs. So yeah, so what will happen is in this October to December window, millions and millions of Christmas Island red crabs will migrate to the ocean based on these weather and lunar cues, and of course other hormonal signals that we still need to learn more about. Fun fact, the male red crabs arrive before the females. So somehow they're able to time that as well, too. Don't even get me started on how they know how to do that. It's kind of like what John will do when we're leaving for a trip. He knows to wait to get in the car right before we go for about as long, like, and basically until I've crossed off one or two things on the list. Put the cat toys out and the cat food out for because otherwise he'll be sitting in the car for hours. He will arrive much longer to the car than I will because I'm always in the house finishing up how I do things. But we're communicating about it. The crabs are not. The males will arrive before the females, and they actually get to the shore and they excavate a burrow. And when they excavate this burrow, they must defend it from other males. Then the crabs, shortly thereafter, they do arrive, and the male has excavated this beautiful burrow, and she likes what she sees in that burrow and the male. And of course, there's probably other pheromones happening. I don't know how a female crab selects a male crab. I couldn't find anything about that. But when the female gets there, the males will mate with the females, and then peace out. They migrate back the 5 miles where they came from into the forest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after mating, the female will stay down in her burrow that the male excavated for about 2 more weeks. And of course, there her brood is developing, and she has her eggs and her fertilized eggs in an abdominal pouch. So inside this brood pouch, the female will incubate these eggs, and that way the eggs can basically complete early development before they're being exposed to the harsh sea waters. Once this incubation is finished in her brood pouch, the female will leave her nice little burrow, and the female red crab will release her eggs right at the turn of the high tide during the last quarter moon. See that witchcraft that she's doing from planning from a month or so out of having to time the walk, timing the brooding, all of that. It's just incredible. And so, yeah, she waits for the high tide of the last quarter moon. And her eggs are released. And so once the eggs are released from the female, she will return to the forest, marches back where she came from, up to 5 miles. I'm assuming it probably takes her another week or two. And the larva that she releases will drift in the ocean for about 3 to 4 weeks as they go through some changes, which I'll talk about in a second, before coming back to the shore is tiny, tiny, tiny little juvenile crabs. And so I just want to touch on briefly the larva as they are basically swept out to sea for these 3 to 4 weeks. They pass through several development stages before coming what's known as a shrimp-like form called a megalope. The megalope will return and gather near the shoreline for a day or two, and then have another transformation into these tiny young crabs that are about 5 millimeters across. So I don't know if that's as tiny as the pea crab, but definitely small.
Yes.
But they're super cute. I was watching videos of them. These little miniature red crabs leave the water and then begin this 1 to 2 day, I read 9-day land trek back into the center of the island. I don't know how they know where the center of the island is.
Where do they know they're going? It's from the adults and the juveniles.
It's incredible. Yeah. It's just incredible. And then so what happens is these cute little miniature crabs, for the first 3 years, Chris, 3 years, these young crabs live hidden in rock crevices and leaf litter and fallen branches and other debris on the forest floor, and just grow and molt and grow and molt. The red crabs grow pretty slowly. They actually don't reach sexual maturity until they're around 4 or 5 years old. And that's when they will start for the first time, joining the annual mass migration to breed. So when they're juvenile, once again, the red crabs will molt several times a year. But once they become adults and start breeding, they usually only molt once a year. When you look at this life that they live for about 3 to 4 weeks out in the ocean, these juvenile crabs as a larvae, megalope, the problem is they are eaten in huge numbers by fish and other large filter feeders, such as manta rays and our beautiful whale sharks. which will actually aggregate around Christmas Island during the breeding season. So only a small fraction of the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of eggs from each female will ever develop into a megalopa larvae and then, of course, reach the shoreline as a tiny juvenile crab. So, from anecdotal reports, most years observers report very little juveniles appearing on land, and sometimes they don't see any at all. But some years when I guess all the stars align, there is a big abundance of the juveniles that survive,
Big
and then
surge. Yeah.
like a surge that will then help replenish the population. So I looked for some robust data to see about how many little juvenile crabs will survive from egg to landfall, and there wasn't really any good data, but they thought maybe less than 1% of eggs ultimately will become breeding adults.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So,
you're talking millions breeding, and you can't have millions return. There'd be no
right,
leaf litter left.
right.
So that's
So,
nature, but
yeah,
that's a key role. I mean, being preyed upon in the ocean, feeding other animals, that's they're doing their ecological role there
of
while
course.
doing on the land the ones that do make it as adults. So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Well, we don't have an organization per se today, but I do invite you to go look at the Christmas Island website. It's at christmas.net.au. It is gorgeous. It is somewhere I definitely want to get, hopefully within the next 10 years. I've got some other places I want to visit first. But to see that migration, but just all the native wildlife there, the coconut crabs, the all if you love snorkeling or diving,
Yes,
it's an
yes.
island paradise. It really is. It's part of Australia, so all these countries should be paid sponsoring us because I need to get you to come to New Zealand, come see me. I need you to go to Australia and go visit them and go to Christmas Island and some of these other places that, trust me, if you save up the pennies and offset your carbon with donating to organizations that are actually making a difference with not just planting trees, but things like in South America or Central America, we're building more carbon friendly ovens for indigenous peoples, stuff like that. These are organizations I donate to offset my carbon, but don't let that hold you back from traveling. Because if we do travel to Christmas Island or some of these places on Earth that you never thought you'd get to. We support the local people, do eco tours, support those operators, which we can go back to Marta, right? Way back when, talking about manta rays in Hawaii, supporting them. The more we get excited about little places like this, Christmas Island red crab, the more excited we get about saving this planet. So, a great job, Angie. I mean, great job. This is such a fun species. I learned so much.
So fun, so interesting, and yeah, I can't wait to see what other incredible facts we uncover next week for our next species. I don't know if it'll be this awesome because the Christmas Island red crab blew me out of the water, literally. It's incredible. The physiology, the evolution, the behavior, so many unknowns, right? So many kind of physiological mechanisms we still don't know about, which it's my curious science mind is just thinking nonstop about how the heck do they do that? I am going to look up at the moon differently and see if I can maybe figure some things out.
Yeah. Well, great job today.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for listening, caring, and sharing. We really appreciate it.